When I looked at what they did to him, they tormented him. Dirty cops tormented General Flynn. General Flynn is a fine man, 35 years or so in the military. You don't get to be where he is by being bad, that I can tell you. And then right at the beginning of the administration, the dirty cops came in. And you see the notes, Jim. I mean, whether you're on our side, that side, whatever. I mean, I assume, let's all talk about fairness. What they did to General Flynn, and by the way, to Roger Stone and to others, was a disaster and a disgrace. And it should never be allowed to happen in this country again. And what I really hoped, because CNN tormented him, in all fairness, I really hope to see, because they haven't been doing it, and I appreciate your question, I hope to see that CNN will not even apologize, which they should, but just cover it fairly, because he's in the process of being exonerated. If you look at those notes from yesterday, that was total exoneration. These were dirty, filthy cops at the top of the FBI, and you know the names better than I do, and they were dishonest people. Now we have to see what's going to happen, but General Flynn was treated like nobody should, and I'm not talking about generals, I'm saying like nobody in this country should be treated.
So
and they did it right at the beginning. They did it right, Jim, they did it right. Well, look at what they did to the guy. I mean, he couldn't have known too much what was happening. They came at him with 15 buses, and he's standing in the middle of a highway. What they did to this man, they tormented him. They destroyed him. But he's going to come back, like I say, he's going to come back bigger and better. But what they did to him, and I hear there's a lot of other stuff coming out if I believe everything I'm reading, because I like to stay out of it. I don't have to stay out of it at all, but I like to stay out of it. And Jim, what they did to him is terrible, and I hope that CNN's going to give him a fair shake and cover it.
On this episode of Just Informed Talk, we're going to look at the latest new Q posts, and they tell us all about the irregular warfare that we are in the midst of. And it talks about the counterinsurgency that must be run against the insurgents who tried to take over this nation. We're going to talk about that. Plus, we're going to cover a bunch of breaking news stories that you guys need to hear. Trust me, all about General Flynn and a bunch of other incredible bombshells that keep dropping day after day. So stick around and check this one out. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Just Informed Talk. I'm your host, Craig. You know, I always say thank you. If you guys have hit that subscribe button, if you haven't done it, please come here, click the big red subscribe button, make sure you hit the bell for notifications, then select the all button so you get notified as soon as all of these videos get posted. We're picking up right where we left off. We left off at Q post 4007, and now we're picking up at 4008, and we have a big show for you tonight. And before we get started, I got to remind you guys real quick, this video is brought to you in part by Brave Browser. You can download it for free using the link in the description of this video. Download it, install it, and run it on your computer, and it will make a contribution to this channel, and it's a win-win because you're going to get a great product. It blocks ads and makes your internet experience so much better. It's a better internet browser. Download the Brave Browser for free using the link in the description today. So let's get right into the latest Q post here. We're going to start at 4008, and Q tells us this: read slowly and carefully, knowledge is power. And then gives us a link to this. What is this? Well, it's the U.S. government's counterinsurgency guide, which was manufactured under the Bush administration, signed off on by them, and then it seems to have been used quite extensively by the Hussein administration, but maybe not in the way that you think. We're going to talk about that in a second here, but let's look at what Q wants us to focus on out of this. He gives us a few important quotes from inside of this document, from the forward letter, the introduction, I guess you could call it, and then from the inside the actual guide itself. But Q wants us to read this full thing. It's 67 pages, so we're not going to do that right here, right now, but I'll leave a link if you guys want to read it in its entirety as well in the description below. But here we go. Let's read it. It says, irregular warfare is far more varied than conventional conflict. Hence, the importance of an intellectual framework that is coherent enough to provide guidance and flexible enough to adapt to circumstances. American counterinsurgency practice rests on a number of assumptions. That the decisive effort is rarely military, although security is the essential prerequisite for success, that our efforts must be directed to the creation of local and national governmental structures that will serve their populations and over time replace the efforts of foreign partners. that superior knowledge, and in particular understanding of the human terrain, is essential, and that we must have the patience to persevere in what will necessarily prove long struggles. Insurgency, however, can and will flourish in the modern environment. The strains created by globalization, by the collapse of weak state structures, by demographic, environmental, and economic pressures, by the ease of cooperation among insurgent groups and criminals, and by the appearance of destructive radical ideologies, all augur a period in which free and moderate governance is at risk. And then it says, insurgency is the organized use of subversion and violence to seize, nullify, or challenge political control of a region. As such, it is primarily a political struggle in which both sides use armed forces to create space for their political, economic, and influence activities to be effective. Insurgency is not always conducted by a single group with a centralized military-style command structure, but may involve a complex matrix of different actors with various aims loosely connected in dynamic and non-hierarchical networks. To be successful, insurgencies require charismatic leadership, supporters, recruits, supplies, safe havens, and funding, often from illicit activities. They only need the active support of a few enabling individuals, but the passive acquiescence of a large proportion of the contested population will give a higher probability of success. This is best achieved when the political cause of the insurgency has strong appeal, manipulating religious, tribal, or local identity to exploit common societal grievances or needs. Insurgents seek to gain control of populations through a combination of persuasion, subversion, and coercion, while using guerrilla tactics to offset the strengths of government security forces. Their intent is usually to protract the struggle, exhaust the government, and win sufficient popular support to force capitulation or political accommodation. Consequently, insurgencies evolve through a series of stages, though the progression and outcome will be different in almost every case. Q. Well, I mean, ultimately, think about what Q's showing us here. First of all, it's very worth noting that this is put in the metaphorical kill box with the brackets in bold here. So that means the insurgency is being put down, right? We are involved in a counterinsurgency. Who were the insurgents who embedded themselves in our government, you ask? Oh, I don't know. Possibly, maybe some people in the Obama administration and the Bush administration who were not acting in good faith, and the Clinton administration. This goes back quite some time. All the way to Bush 1, it seems, and maybe even beyond that. So understand that this is a decades-long insurgency that's been building, right? And as it describes in here, it was able to flourish in the modern environment because of globalization, because of the collapse of weak state structures and demographic, environmental, and economic pressures, by the ease of cooperation among these criminals, right? They were all cooperating with one another. Think about it. All the connections that may or may not exist between people like Umar Abedin and the Muslim Brotherhood, and then you connect that to Hillary Clinton, or you connect the Clinton Foundation to all the money that was coming in from the Saudis and other foreign national governments. And then you connect that to the private server that existed, where special access program may or may not have existed, that may or may not have been taken and used by our enemies against us in a possible deal, right? Where they sold the access to that information for kickbacks to their foundation. Now, if these things prove to be true, that is the insurgency. They were embedding themselves within our government, and not only did they do that, but they embedded themselves within big tech, they embedded themselves within the modern mainstream fake news media, and they've embedded themselves into a lot of these corporate structures, these corporations in this country. So you see it. That's what Q's been telling us to look at. The resignations, the people stepping down from Congress, the people being forced or fired out of the FBI and the DOJ. This was all basically a very large and vast conspiracy of insurgents who have embedded themselves into our government and were seeking the destruction of this country and then enriching themselves in the process, basically. So that's what we're up against. And that's why they're terrified when people stand up against it. And that's why they're terrified of even reporting on the narrative that exists, that the military saw all of this happening And there are a few good men still and women who came forward to stop this, right? And President Trump is one of those good men, and as well as a bunch of other high-ranking officers and people in all different positions across government. And even you have the whistleblowers coming out of big tech. You have the whistleblowers coming out of the fake news. These are all the people who are working the counterinsurgency against these people who have taken over a portion of our government, right? And Q wants us to remember that this is irregular warfare. This isn't going to be, the warfare of the future, which we seem to be in right now, is not going to be tanks and guns. It's going to be exactly what you're seeing: insurgency, manipulation, coercion, corruption, installing radical ideologies. All of that is meant to have an end effect of destroying our nation. So we have to come together and expose it, and we have to work in this framework, right, which takes both the military and civilian population and basically gives us the tools we need to not only expose this corruption and criminality and this, insurgency, but also to do something about it, to take it down, to get it out, because there's nobody in this country who wants this. And the people who, let's just be honest, the majority of the people who support these people who basically ran this insurgency are just brainwashed. They're lied to so much that they have no critical thinking capabilities left. They just repeat what CNN says. They repeat what MSNBC says. They repeat the talking points that are fed to them by the corporate, puppet masters, by the elite puppet masters, the so-called elite puppet masters, I should say, and those who have these massive generational fortunes. They have generational wealth. You're talking about the Soroses, the Rothschilds, the House of Saud, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, I should say, and the Chinese corrupt government, right? With this nouveau rich they have there, where you have the up and coming Communist Party officials who are, making millions and billions of dollars because they are corrupt. And they're just using that same system that they have in China here. They're buying influence. They're buying their way into every facet of our society. And then they're undermining it with propaganda. And by, pushing these narratives against us, they're trying to convince us, look, I'm not saying that Russia's all roses and rainbows, but they're trying to convince us that the true threat is a nation that has an economy that's, barely the size of California in Russia, and versus, or not even the size of California by itself in Russia. Because, don't forget, actually the Russian GDP is half of what the individual state of California's GDP is. So they're the ones they keep saying, oh, they're the enemy, which, I guess we're not on good terms, and we haven't been since, the Cold War. But ultimately, while ignoring China, while selling us out to China, while enacting these Chinese-style fascistic communist controls over our rights as Americans and people on the globe, right? So, or people around the globe, I should say. But this is where we're at, ladies and gentlemen. We are the counterinsurgency. We, as Q said, we are the cure, right? Because these individuals are the ones who decided to act in a way that undermined our nation, its security, its sovereignty, all for a multitude of reasons, including benefiting themselves and their foundations and their own private slush funds that may or may not exist, and at the same time aiding and abetting our adversaries globally, because the people who became powerful in this country do not believe this is an exceptional nation. They believe the opposite. They believe that this nation is basically an accident. It should never have gotten as strong as it did. Everything we've done is terrible in our entire past. And we're here to stand up and fight for what we've fought for since 1776, and that is this nation and the republic and our sovereignty and our independence and our freedom. They want to take that away and make you into a slave. First digital slave, then an actual slave in real life. Look at what you're doing. Look at yourself right now. Are you locked inside of your home? Are you forced to stay at home? Are you told you can't even go to work now? Are you in a position where you're better off or worse off under this global tyranny that has sprung out of nowhere, that, as President Trump said, attacked us with this virus in this, silent war, as Q has said, against the hidden enemy, as President Trump says. So, look, you may think this is good, you may think this is bad, but ultimately, if you're gonna, objectively look at it, there is no way to come to any other conclusion than the people who are in power, positions of power in this government for the last few decades, have been selling us out to the highest bidders. They've been undermining our security. They've been slowly turning this into a police state. And now that they think they can steal it back, right? They've launched another, as President Trump said, I'm quoting the President of the United States, an attack against this country. That's where we're at, right? So think about that. Let that sink in and understand the irregular warfare that we're in. And I'm glad Q reiterated this and cleared this up, because this is just such an important point, I think, for most people to try to understand. And this is an important point for us all to get, right? And the one thing I wanted to point out too, before we move to the next thing, is this sentence right here. It says, and that we must have the patience to persevere in what will necessarily prove long struggles. This is the American counterinsurgency. Okay, interestingly enough, and going back to the document, one more thing I want to point out here on this document is, let's see, it's right here, the counterinsurgency. It's a blend of comprehensive civilian and military efforts. I wonder who the civilians are who might be involved in this. Maybe the Anons and the Q movement and a few other factions. I wonder. Civilian and military efforts designed to simultaneously contain insurgency and address its root causes. Unlike conventional warfare, non-military means are often the most effective elements, with military forces playing an enabling role. Does that sound like anything that you've been experiencing maybe for the last 3 years? I know I have. Counterinsurgency is an extremely complex undertaking which demands of policymakers a detailed understanding of their own specialist field, but also a broad knowledge of a wide variety of related disciplines. Counterinsurgency approaches must be adaptable and agile. And does that sound like a plan, an adaptable plan that maybe we've all been following to counter this insurgency in our country? Strategies will usually be focused primarily on the population rather than the enemy, and will seek to reinforce the legitimacy of the affected government while reducing insurgent influence. Wow. It sounds like we're involved in a counterinsurgency movement, but I don't know. It says this can often only be achieved in covert with political reform to improve quality of governance and address underlying grievances, many of which may be legitimate. Since U.S. counterinsurgency campaigns will normally involve engagement in support of a foreign government, either independently or as part of a coalition, success will often depend on the willingness of that government to undertake the necessary political changes. However great its know-how and enthusiasm, an outside actor can never fully compensate for lack of will, incapacity, or counterproductive behavior on the part of the supported government. So, look, they gave us the guide on how to counter their insurgency, probably unwittingly or wittingly. I'm not sure yet, because we've had patriots in the military the whole time, but ultimately, you can't fight a war without support. And we finally have gotten to a point where we have enough support to go after these people. We've been watching them. We've been monitoring them. We've taken down every single note and email and communication, and we know what they did. We have the evidence. The good men and women at the NSA and other intelligence agencies in the military have it all. The Army of Northern Virginia and others. So remember that. Remember that what's happening here is very well organized, and it is a counter to an insurgency that was launched against this nation. So that's my interpretation of it. Feel free to leave your own interpretation below, but I figured I'd share that, and I thought that was really important. The next post here, Q says knowledge is power, and gives us this Google Doc link. Now, I'm not a doctor, so this is not medical advice. Read this for yourself. It talks about chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine with acethromycin. I'm sorry, I can't even say that word. the other medicine, and the things that they're trying to use to support the treatment of COVID-19 and bring people back, right? So I'm not sure about all this. I'll leave this for other people who are more, learned in this subject to review. But it seems President Trump tried to tell us from the get-go that chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine is a helpful treatment for COVID-19. And then also, everybody keeps pointing back. Do you guys remember the CQ post from Q? Thank you, CQ China. Thank you, President Xi. Did they know that this was a possibility for these deep state actors to launch something like this, and then they figured out this is the way to cure it? I don't know. I have no idea. Just asking for a friend, I guess. But figure you guys will let me know down in the comments what you think about that all. Q just says knowledge is power, and that's definitely something to look at more closely. Now, we have some new Q posts today. Here we are. Q post 4010 says here, it gives us the picture of the flags out. And then it gives us a link to this, the Presidential Proclamation of Law Day on May 1st, 2020, which I'll leave a link to it as well as everything else in the description. But Q gives us the quote out of it saying, "Now, therefore, I, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States, in accordance with Public Law 8720 as amended, do hereby proclaim May 1st, 2020 as Law Day, USA. I urge all Americans, including government officials, to observe this day by reflecting upon the importance of the rule of law in our nation and displaying the flag of the United States in support of this national observance. And I especially urge the legal profession, the press, and the radio, television, and media industries to promote and participate in the observance of this day." I mean, look, we are promoting law and order. We want to bring a single-tier justice system back to this country. We don't want the elites, supposed elites, this corrupt class of individuals who get away with everything because they have enough money to continue to buy their way out of everything, where they have the influence over the structures that are supposed to administer the laws fairly. This is what we're standing up against, and I know I'll be flying my flag tomorrow in observance of this day, and I will be posting on social media, and I encourage you guys to do the same thing. And I'm thankful that Q gave us this post to look at that and to put it out there. I'm thankful for President Trump making the order, I should say, too, more importantly. So, yeah, we are going to observe the Law Day, and I hope that it will actually have some more effect, and some other things may happen tomorrow that will help bolster the law in our country and the law and order that we have. The next one here is a Twitter post that Q points us to, and this is of a Ben Weingarten tweet where it says, "Per new Flynn document dump, one wonders who was Crossfire Typhoon." Well, that's pretty simple. Crossfire Typhoon was the George Papadopoulos investigation that involved the FBI, CIA, and State Department running spies like Stephen Halper into the Trump campaign to entrap George Papadopoulos. Yeah, that seems to fit. You can actually read over here. Daily Caller published this article talking about Crossfire Typhoon in the 171-page transcript of the ex-Trump aide's secret conversation with an FBI informant. Remember, the FBI was sending informants to talk to George Papadopoulos to try to set up Trump as well, right? They were doing this with multiple targets. So it was a coordinated effort to, launch this coup using these different operations that were acting in conjunction to set up and frame individuals close to President Trump, it seems, when you look at the evidence and put it all together. Q says, Crossfire Hurricane, Crossfire Typhoon, Crosswind, Classified 1 through 99, unreleased, redacted. You didn't think the statement by POTUS, read calm before the storm, was just random, did you? Transparency brings accountability, Q. So don't forget, Q also told us what's going to come out is that they weren't just going after President Trump, they were doing this against Ted Cruz too. So what does it look like for the FBI as far as that goes, and when that information starts coming out? And when's Ted Cruz gonna really start calling for the investigation into his setup, right? So they were setting him up for a coup if he got elected as well. It seems possible. But if you guys haven't followed this yet, you need to keep reading about all this. I'll leave links to everything down in the description. The next post here, Q gives us this American coup d'etat with the flag upside down, and it literally is Barack Obama, Loretta Lynch, James Comey, Hillary Clinton, John Podesta, Uma Abedin, Susan Rice, Aaron Zebley, Valerie Jarrett, Ben Rhodes, Sally Yates, John Brennan, James Clapper, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and I can't read some of these names, Evelyn Farkas, Susan Powers, Andrew Weissman, Mary Jacoby, Rod Rosenstein, Dirty Mueller, Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, Bruce Orr, Nellie Orr, Jeannie Rhee, and James Baker. And then what does Q say? When this is finished, a much bigger graphic will be needed. Much bigger, biggest political scandal in American history, Q. So for everyone out there saying nothing's happening and that nobody's ever going to be held accountable, I would beg to differ, saying, look at this, look at what we're going to be seeing continue to come out. I mean, all the information that's coming out is proving what we've been saying for so long. So that's something to consider. And the next post Q gives us, which are just coming in now as we're kind of doing this video, is this. It is Nancy Pelosi, right? It says, and this is a tweet where she put it out back in September of 2018 against Justice Kavanaugh when he was going through his process. And somebody did this, which is hilarious. It says, I applaud the courage of Tara Reade to come forward to share her story. As we continue to learn more about these allegations against Joe Biden, we must ensure that Reade's rights to justice and privacy are respected. Hashtag choose someone else. When in reality, that was her writing about Christine Blasey Ford previously and Justice Kavanaugh. So look, Q says it here. Used as a political tool to attack the other side and weaponized, where are the pink hats? When you are awake, you are able to see clearly, Q. So yeah, where are the people marching through the streets saying, we have to believe all women when Tara Reade accuses Joe Biden, whereas when Christine Blasey Ford does the same thing to Justice Kavanaugh, they're marching through the streets and yelling about believing all women. So it just, you can see through the hypocrisy. It's all what's most expedient for them. And if it goes against their orthodoxy, then it is not allowed. All right, so the next post here is Q telling us all about this Washington Examiner article and what it means. This article actually talks about the Democratic National Convention being pushed back a month to August, just before the Republican National Convention. So originally it was supposed to be in July from 13th to the 16th, but now it's going to be in August. So this is something that you can't make up, and Q tells us exactly how to read this. And he says, why are they pushing back the Democrat convention? COVID-19 concern or strategic for last-minute change? Change of batter coming? Why was she saved from officially announcing? Why was she reserved for a last-minute change? How do you attempt to sneak one in? How do you attempt to ensure victory? Adopt national vote by mail? How do you convince American it was legitimate, America? Release fake polls indicating favorable leads in swing states? How do you harm opponents' accomplishments regarding economy and unemployment? How do you terminate opponents' highly effective rallies? How do you shelter Democrat lead candidate from embarrassing debates and or rallies? How do you shelter Democrat corruption regarding FISA, Russia, Flynn, etc. from reaching the mainstream? How do you extend the trade negotiation deadline with China? How do you test constitutional rights of people? How do you provide cover for state governments to adopt new voter laws? How do you effectively control the population? How do you expand big tech overreach regarding tracing privacy issues? How do you fix taxpayer bailout? The long broken economies of California and New York? How do you enrich select people, companies, by promoting a solution to a global crisis? How do you keep people living in fear and isolation in order to accept the above? Define insurgency. How do you accomplish all of the above, Q? So, hey, Q's telling us right here exactly the plan, exactly what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. So we've talked about this before. Just remember, this is all a part of a plan, right? They're trying to steal this election. They're trying to take away our right to come together and support our president and have the rallies that we were having and have that feel of pride in our country, because they despise our country. They want to control and rule our country. They want to be your ruler. They would like you to become a serf, a peasant, a slave, whatever you want to call it. And they're doing it with the help of the elites who they prop up, who are spreading their disinformation and helping bolster it. So just remember that. Now, The next post here is an Anon who put this together. You have this post about YouTube CEO wanting to pull all videos that aren't medically substantiated, such as advising people to take vitamin C from the platform in regard to the COVID-19. And you have these letters from Adam Schiff to Sundar Pichai at Google and Susan Wojcicki at YouTube, trying to tell her that she needs to step up her censorship, her authoritarian censorship, and remove content that questions their narrative, right? You can't even question it. You can't even ask, hey, is this the right thing or the wrong thing? Maybe this cure works. Maybe that cure works. Maybe we're going to help solve this problem. Maybe we shouldn't be locking ourselves in our homes as in some sort of home imprisonment and just foregoing all of our constitutional rights for some invisible threat that we can't even see or identify. It just is all around us now. So we must just, are we going to spend the rest of our lives locked in our homes? You know, it's just, I don't understand what world we're living in, right? And then Adam Schiff here saying misinformation is dangerous. Misinformation about public health is deadly. And then he sent a letter to you, Google and YouTube about it. Think about this. This is the guy who got up in front of Congress, as it highlights here, and lied about President Trump's phone call. And then said it was just parody. So he's a comedian. He's not the chairman of the House Select Intelligence Committee, as it says here. He's a comedian when it suits him. But when he needs to shut down your voice and censor you, he's writing to the top executives at these companies because they don't care about your First Amendment rights. I've seen them delete so many channels, delete so many videos, and get rid of so many voices for doing nothing more than disagreeing with them. So they're authoritarians. They're being advised by authoritarians. And these are the same people who have obviously been orchestrating this setup of President Trump. We are getting into dangerous territory. It says head of House Intelligence Committee Adam Schiff demands Google, YouTube, Twitter step up their authoritative censorship and silencing. On Thursday, Representative Adam Schiff, the most dishonest and compulsive liar in Congress, sent a letter to the CEOs of Google, YouTube, and Twitter to urge them to use their authoritative powers to censor and silence voices during the coronavirus pandemic. Last week, YouTube CEO told CNN the company would silence anyone who strayed from the official World Health Organization policy. Google's cool with that. In fact, the company's very proud of her censorship. Remember, this in November, Democrats support this and want more censorship and silencing. Schiff sent these letters off to Google, YouTube, and Twitter. And of course, it gives this Gateway Pundit article talking about that. Q says, control of the sheep population, sheep, control of the narrative, Q. That's all it's about. They're trying to control what you think so that they can control you. You are to be a serf for them. That's all. Plain and simple. They look at you like sheep. Q's told us that over and over again. You are not, as an individual, it's supposed to be like China in their mind. They are the important people, the arbiters of truth and reality and society and what's good and what's bad. And then they tell you what to think and what to do. And if you step out of line, then they silence you. They disappear you. You will digitally disappear. And that in and of itself is terrifying, but that's where we are. The next one, was the DNC hacked by Russia? CIA Brennan Force. Seth Rich internal download hand-to-hand pass USA. CrowdStrike code insert. If FBI chain of command was corrupt, what other investigations were corrupted? Who did they provide cover for? How far back did it go? Q. This goes all the way back to Mueller and probably before that. This is uncovering a massive criminal enterprise that existed within our government as an insurgency, if you will. And then Q finally says error was ×2 on the move. Q. So he said was here twice. Yeah. So think about that when you're thinking about, where we're at and what's happening, because I know I will be, and I know I'm going to keep shining light on this as long as God lets me. And I hope you guys do the same. I guess that's where we're going to go ahead and leave it. I just want to say thank you. If you guys haven't done it, come here, click the big red subscribe button and watch these videos, share them, and leave your thoughts, theories, and insights below. I want to hear what you guys have to think about everything. A few other ways you can help out the channel would also be to come find me over on Twitter at JustInformYou. Also, the Twitter handle is at Informed News. You can follow both those. And you can come find me over here at justinformednews.com, the official website for Just Informed Talk, and BitChute.com/JustInformedTalk is the backup channel. So, a couple other ways you can help out, both financial, Patreon, Patreon.com, crowdfunding website, monthly donation. Your support keeps this channel alive. I can't tell you how much it means, because I mean, all I can really say is that I couldn't do this without your support. If you guys weren't there, contributing whatever it is, you keep this channel alive. Thank you. I also have a GoFundMe set up if you want to make a one-time or anonymous donation. And we'll go ahead and wrap it up with a segment we do at the end of every one of these episodes called God's Grace is Greater, where we talk about God's grace, which is truly greater. And today I have a verse I want to share with you that, really touched my heart, and it just reminds us of what our calling is in this world. And it's out of 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 8 through 12, and it's talking about doing no evil. Listen to this. This is what we're all called to, in my opinion, and how we need to really strive to live our lives. It says, "Now finally, all of you should be like-minded and sympathetic, should love believers and be compassionate and humble, not paying back evil for evil or insult for insult, but on the contrary, giving a blessing, since you were called for this, so that you can inherit a blessing. For the one who wants to love life and to see good days must keep his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking deceit, and he must turn away from evil and do good. He must seek peace and pursue it, because the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are open to their request. But the face of the Lord is against those who do evil." So that's my message to not just all of you out there listening to this, but to everyone out there, including those who we look at and we see have been involved with such evil. What is God calling you to do? If you're truly lost, then I truly can only say that it's my job as a Christian to pray for you. And it's our job as a Christian, I should say, as Christians, to pray for those and to remember that we don't pay back evil for evil or insult for insult. What we do is we give a blessing. We put that positivity in the world even that much more. And we live our lives righteously. And we lead by example. And we do unto others as we'd want unto ourselves. Because if we want to see those good days, as it says, we must just live the example that Christ has given us, right? Keep our tongues from evil and our lips from deceit, turning away from evil and seeking peace and pursuing it. So that's my message to everyone out there, and I thank you all for coming here. And I'm going to say a quick prayer. Dear Lord and Heavenly Father, bless us, keep us strong, be with the audience, be with our entire country, be with our president, and help us overcome this. Help us overcome this struggle. Help us find you and live a Christ-like life for you. And we thank you most of all for our eternal salvation through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed that show. Remember to come here, hit the subscribe button if you haven't, hit it, punch it, tap it, headbutt it, whatever. Hit the like button if you guys like this content and want to see me make more. That's going to be it for me. Thanks for watching Just Informed Talk. My name is Craig. Godspeed and God bless each and every one of you, Patriots.